All right. Hi, everybody. This is the first edition of our podcast. So my name is Mark. I'm a student of bioengineering at McGill. I'm also the co-chair of CUBEC for 2023-2024. And I'm here with Sara.
Yes, I'm Sara. I'm a team lead on biodesign on the bioadhesive surgical glue project. And I'm co-leading the project with Karim, who's also here.
I'm Karim. I'm another team lead for the surgical adhesive project with biodesign and also a bioengineering student.
Okay, so we're all in the same program, so we kind of know each other pretty well. I know we had a class yesterday. So we kind of know each other pretty well. So I guess what we can start with is just kind of getting into what biodesign is. As you guys can see, I have a sticker on my computer. I was a part of biodesign in my first year in university. I had a good experience there. So if you guys can kind of go into it, what is the history of biodesign and what are you guys working on now? I don't know, whoever wants to start, you guys can go for it.
I'd like to start, that's fine.
I think you're a better place to speak about the history of biodesign, because I think you've been on biodesign longer than me, so maybe you can start with the history, what has biodesign done in the past?
Biodesign started in, was it 2018 or 2019? I don't remember the exact year, but it started around 4 years ago by bioengineering students. They just kind of got together and decided to, found a design team, because a lot of design teams had previously existed, but that were more geared towards other majors like mechanical or electrical engineering. Yeah. So, with the coming of bioengineering, which was kind of relatively new at McGill, I think they felt inspired to found a kind of bioengineering related design team. So that's where it started. There's been several projects. I think I don't remember the number, but I think maybe our sixth project.
Wow.
I can't. Don't hold me to that number, but that's around where we're at. And yeah.
Yeah, I was a part of the microneedle patch project a few years ago. So micro NA, we were using microneedle patches to detect hyponatremia, which is was a really cool experience for me. And right now you guys are working on a new project from what I know. So if you guys want to talk a bit about that and what you guys are working on.
Yeah, so our project is a surgical adhesive for internal wound closure in minimally invasive surgeries. And that's a lot of big words, and there's a lot of things to kind of unpack there.
Yeah.
But essentially in minimally invasive surgeries, or internal wounds, which are not external skin cuts, but they're really internal tissues, there's not a lot of glue options. That's what we found when we were reading the literature, because a lot of them cause immune system responses. So we're trying to develop a glue that is biocompatible, so it doesn't cause those immune system responses, but it's also strong, so it's able to hold tissues together well. And that's kind of an engineering optimization balance that we're kind of going for. And so our mechanism of action is inspired by algae. That's why it's an algae inspired. So it's a biomimetic adhesive, which biomimicry, as we know in bioengineering, is imitating a biological system or some phenomenon in nature. We imitate it in our own creations. And so we're using an imitation molecule of the one that is secreted by the brown algae to stick to surfaces in the ocean. So
okay, cool. Wow. Yeah,
that's our concept.
Definitely a lot to unpack. How did you guys start with this product? Were you guys going through different ones initially, and you guys kind of narrowed it down to something algae inspired, or that's kind of where you guys started from?
Well, during the summer, the exec team always researches multiple different ideas that could be turned into biodesign projects. But this one was an idea that I brought to the table during the summer because it was a project. It was inspired by a group project that I did in Bio 390, which is one of our lab courses in the bioengineering program.
The EA that we did?
Yes, exactly. The egg albumin adhesive, and we had a whole module about biological adhesives. Mm-hmm. And so my group project was centered around making a surgical adhesive, but we weren't able to go very much in depth with it because it was just a class project. We only had one lab session to do it. Mm-hmm. So we didn't get a lot of data, and I could see the breadth of information and different directions and optimizations we could go and do with it. So that's why I decided to pitch it during the exec summer research.
Okay, cool.
Definitely saw the potential in the project. And then over the summer you guys worked on even more understanding the context, I think, and the application and further directions for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I find like there's a lot of like things that we learn in class and in these labs that we can like kind of expand on, but we don't have the time like in school and in class to kind of go through all these like concepts and stuff. But once we do have the time, or like an avenue like biodesign, you kind of have the extra resources and like the kind of the freedom to get creative with it. So yeah, no, that sounds like great. Sounds like you guys are doing a great job. What's your process like? Where are you guys at now in terms of like the adhesive, and what's like your outlook for like the next year? And I know you guys have some team members, so you guys can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, it does take some time to get a team together. So we've been working like really hard to elect a team, and we've had our first general meetings. We've had sub-team meetings, and so things are starting to kick off now, I think.
Okay.
And so as teams meet throughout the semester, they're really going to start planning. Okay, how are we going to go into the lab and make this happen? Like, how are we going to formulate this bioadhesive? How are we going to test it? And so there's going to be a lot of literature review being done this semester about really how do you make it? How do you improve it? Because Sara has kind of in her past group project started with it. So really, how do you optimize, and what are the criteria that we want to test it with?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It might be a good time to talk about our sub-teams that we have, because I heard you mention like formulation and testing. So in biodesign, we always have like sub-teams to break up the problem into different focus areas for different like sub-teams to work on. So our group has 3 sub-teams: formulation, validation, and medical outreach. So the formulation team is focusing on like the chemistry and the actual like what ingredients we're going to use.
Yeah, that's important.
The validation, maybe like the most central part, but validation is also really central, because that's the data collection and the testing. Like, how are we actually going to test the tensile strength, the shear stress and strain, curves and fluid mechanic properties, and also deciding like which metrics are most relevant to test, what should we even test, and what the data analysis is going to be afterwards. So that's the validation team.
Okay.
And then the medical outreach team it's the first time that we have a team like this, or sub-team like this
I've never heard of that one.
In biodesign. Yeah, exactly. So they're focusing on interviewing medical professionals and really understanding how this adhesive could be used in clinical practice.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And like the different use cases and which parameters would make it, like which attributes does it have that would make it more useful for medical professionals, and what they think like the best uses for it would be.
Okay, wow, no, I didn't know that was a sub-team. That makes a lot of sense, like you kind of have this product all the time and you don't even know if it's like going to be used and applied, but the fact that you're reaching out to these like medical professionals and people in the clinics, I think it's important. That way you can kind of get like a feel of like, is there like market demand for this? Because at the end of the day, you actually want this product to be used, right? It's kind of one, like to see a light at the end of the tunnel. You're working out all the time. Like right now it's just a concept, but you want to ensure that like there's someone who's actually going to use it, right? Putting your time.
I can add on that in terms of the history of biodesign, because last year there was a project called Solar A, which is about creating a water filtration backpack, to the viewers who might have not have heard about it before. And so this water filtration backpack, essentially there were mechanical filters, like porous filters, to like eliminate kind of the dirt particles, and there was also supposed to use like radiation from sunlight to attack, to kind of kill bacteria over an extended duration, like an extended exposure to sunlight. And one thing that was really cool that happened was that the team, we went to Honduras, which was, the use context for this problem. It was meant for Honduran communities who didn't have direct access to water. Mm-hmm. So we managed to go there with an organization called Global Brigades, and kind of get feedback on the backpack. So I think like this was like a really good initiative in terms of the bioadhesive, like this medical outreach team, and I think it really falls under like the umbrella of biodesign, like one of the goals being like trying to connect with the world. Like these are worldwide problems, and we want to like address that. Like it's not something just in the classroom. We really want to kind of explore what's in the world and interact with the world in that sense. Where in class you wouldn't have that experience.
Yeah. No, I mean I find like usually in class it's you with your books, and now like with the books. I mean, sometimes we do some design work, which I think is like at least my favorite part of class, like when we do design projects. But it's always like fun to think about like, oh, like what would we have done if we had like more time or more resources? Like we really can actually like incorporate this product into something. So yeah, like I think this medical outreach thing is really something that's going to boost at least even like the motivation for you guys to like know like, okay, what we're doing now is actually going to be like used and is needed. So it kind of gives that extra push. So like what have some challenges been for you guys like in the past few months? I mean, I think like literature review is tough. Like it's a lot of reading. So I know that's the stage you're at now, and also like recruiting team members as well. So what are some challenges that you guys have had with any of those or with extra other things?
Sure. I'm sure we'll both be able to speak on this.
You guys can go one at a time.
I know some challenges, like you mentioned this summer, it is very hard to coordinate people like your times during the summer to do that research.
Of course.
One limitation we had this year was the size or the number of teams. We do need an amount of funding to run a team, and depending on how much funding we have, kind of decides how many projects we can have. And so we were really happily surprised to see the huge interest in both projects that we have this year.
Okay, cool.
But
what's the other project that you have? Just so we can.
Yeah, it's lipid nanoparticles for hemophilia.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, we could definitely get more into that. But essentially, it would have been nice to get to keep those people in maybe a third project, but we weren't able to do that.
To put things into perspective, we had like more than 100 applications for research members, and our team size is limited to somewhere around like 20. That was 100 for like both projects combined, so like approximately 50 for each, and then like 20 team members for each or something like that. So we had to, we were very sad we had to like reject people that we really were impressed by because of the limitations. Yeah, but
would you say like most of the applicants were like students in bioengineering or in biomedical engineering, or there were some like outside, like maybe chemical engineering, some mechanical engineering, or even like biochemistry? Would you guys say there's some kind of level of outreach from the other faculties at McGill?
Yeah, there's a good mixed bag. I think that the largest group is still bioengineering, just because they hear about biodesign more often. But there is like interest from other programs as well, and we do have team members. We end up picking like team members who are also like from a variety of different programs. So our teams are not exclusively bioengineering, and there's interest and applications and successful like research members who come from all sorts of different programs. Yeah, like biochemistry you were saying. There's some people who are neuroscience.
Yeah, I feel like we did a good job this year at recruiting interest from other faculties. Yeah,
how did you guys reach out like to other faculties? Was it through like other student groups in those faculties, or just like people that you knew over there?
Well, some of the recruitment events that we did at the beginning of the semester, we did go to like Involvement Day, which is an event hosted by the EUS. So that's more towards engineering students, but that's general engineering, not just bioengineering. So that would have gotten some attention from other engineering disciplines, like other than bioengineering. We also went to Activities Night, which is a general like club fair put on by SMU, which is McGill's student association.
At the field house? No?
Yes, at the field house.
Nice.
We were there. So that's kind of open to everyone at McGill. So we were able to get some attention there from like people from all different programs. Yeah,
I mean that's nice. I think because like the field of bioengineering and biomedical engineering has like so many like aspects to it. I mean, there's mechanical and there's software and there's like chemistry as well. So I guess like that kind of leads to like what we want to talk about next is in terms of like the broadness of the field. So I mean, I guess we can kind of go into like what our interests are. I mean, I think. Sara, you can start with what your interests are really in the field, and I mean, we're only third-year students. I mean, we're already third-year students. I mean, I don't know. It's crazy when you think about it. Like we're more than halfway done, but it might be interesting to kind of like see like if you've kind of narrowed down what you're interested in, because like we said, like bioengineering, biomedical engineering, there's like so many things you can do. Have you narrowed it down, or are you working on it now? I'm assuming.
I've done a pretty good job of narrowing it down, and I'm glad to say it was thanks to like internship opportunities that I'm really grateful for having. I was able to do a couple of internships in the pharmaceutical industry, both of them, and I was lucky to kind of strike gold on my first try of like internship search and finding something I liked immediately, which was very good and lucky.
Doesn't always happen.
I feel very lucky for that. Fell in love with pharmaceutical industry. It's super cool, and I love to be able to like help patients and have positive impact in that way. And so through my internships, I was able to get exposed to like different types of professions, different roles, different organizations that exist within the industry and all different ways to benefit society in that way. And so I'm planning on continuing into grad studies, but then with the goal of pursuing pharmaceutical industry after that.
Okay, yeah, pretty clear cut. Really. Yeah, you're way ahead of most students. I think a lot of like students, like, I mean, I think once like third year started, really, even like end of the second year, I started like worrying about like what am I going to do now, what I'm going to do next. So like I'm still unsure, obviously, but I'm kind of like I'm interested in medical devices, so like I think I've narrowed it down. Like I think the pharmaceutical side is like not my thing, which I think is okay. Like that's why we're here to learn and talk to each other. And also like I'm interested in like entrepreneurship, so like kind of trying to find the intersection between like medical devices and I don't know, who knows, maybe a startup. We'll see.
I was gonna ask,
yeah.
Would you guys consider a startup, like either joining one or?
Yeah, I think like startups are. My sister worked at a startup. I think those are great places to really get like a lot of hands-on experience. You know, because once you're like really in like an industry and like working for a big company, you're kind of your roles are really established and you're doing what you're supposed to do. But a startup is kind of like you pick and choose, and you can be given something to do that you're not really like super like well versed in. You kind of get to learn like on the go, and I think that's kind of what I'm interested in. So I think startup space is something that interests me a lot, but still medical devices and like biotech is I'm trying to pair the two. We'll see what happens. Karim, what about you?
Yeah.
Have you narrowed it down, or are you working on it right now?
No, I think I know what my interests are, but I don't know what I'm gonna necessarily do after graduating. So like I'm quite interested in biomaterials in general, like anything. Cool. Like for example, for those who might not be aware, bioengineering has 3 streams. Yeah. So the first one is more biomaterials, maybe biomechanics. Biomechanics, yeah. Biomechanics. The second one is more chemistry oriented.
Yeah, tissue engineering, nanoparticles.
Yeah. It's more computational. Yeah. And my interests really align. Like I think that stream describes my interests: biomechanics, biomaterials. Mm-hmm. I'm also really interested in anything that would be related to like sustainable engineering. I just find that topic kind of closer to me. So like I would be highly motivated to work in anything that kind of attacks that. And also I wanted to add, Sara, I feel like you know when you described your interests and like also your internship experience, I feel like that kind of like I feel like that experience has already kind of brought something to the biodesign team. Like I don't know if you've thought of that or you know what I'm saying, but I just had that impression. I don't know if you had anything to say about that.
Well, I can say the medical outreach team, definitely that idea came from my internship experience because I was able to shadow some medical affairs professionals out in the field and interacting with doctors in the same sort of way that I'm trying to emulate with this medical outreach team.
Smart.
Because I was really inspired by that. I thought that was really relevant, and it might be something I'd like to do later on as well. And I thought it would be really relevant to integrate it into a biodesign project, especially one where it's a surgical device, because us undergraduate students don't know a lot about surgery.
Yeah, we're not doing surgery.
And this kind of product is something that is not like consumer product where like any general person is going to go buy this. It's really something that's going to be used by surgeons and bought by surgeons. Mm-hmm. So it's even more relevant to talk to those professionals about it. So I
mean, we hear this all the time. You have to like establish your market first. Mm-hmm. So your market would be like the hospital and the medical professionals. It wouldn't be like patients buying the actual surgical adhesive. So I think that makes sense. But Karim, I wanted to ask you. So Sara said her internships kind of let her narrow down her path. How about you? Would you say it's like your classes or like involvement in biodesign? Like what do you think is shaping your future path in bioengineering?
Yeah. So I haven't done an internship yet. That's something I would love to do before graduating, and I still have more than a year and a half, so hopefully enough time to get an internship. And if I could, strike luck, as Sara did, hopefully, fingers crossed.
We all hope.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For me, I think biodesign did help quite a bit. Like for example, this project I think lines up a lot with my interests. Also, like I think class too. Like there are just certain classes that I lean more towards, and others maybe less. Yeah. I feel like there's something else I was going to mention. Yeah. Oh yes. I had a summer I had a summer research experience.
Yeah, that helps.
No, it definitely helps. So I spent the summer researching with a professor at McGill in the mechanical engineering department, but his focus is bioengineering, and I do feel like that topic is something I was drawn to. For example, we worked on a synthetic membrane that would be used for getting the diffusion rate of drugs. So for example, when you apply like a certain drug to your skin, like topical drugs, you need to know how it diffuses into your skin. And so they've developed membranes for the skin, but those membranes wouldn't give the same reading for like.
So they like mimic the skin, you're saying?
They mimic the diffusion of the skin.
So you could get like data and see how.
Exactly.
Okay,
instead of using skin.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
But for say like soft internal tissue like arteries, right? Like things diffuse through arteries. There are drugs that diffuse through the arterial wall, but you can't use the same membrane because they have different properties. So
you have to mimic another membrane.
For
each kind of drug. Okay.
If that makes sense.
But I wanted to touch on a point that you mentioned when you're like. You said like some classes you like, some classes you like less, right? So like, I think it's something that like really like I can relate to. I think for me, when it comes to like narrowing down a path, it's kind of like even like crossing things off a list. You know, it's kind of like there's all these things I can do, and then you try something out, and you're like, okay, this isn't for me. And then there's multiple ways. I mean, for you, it's like kind of like you said, struck luck, but it can also be like not striking like a lot of times, and then you kind of narrow it down, and you have like 2 or 3 options. Like for me, like I think that's kind of how it was for me. Like I would try things out and like, oh, like this is like, it's cool. I mean, I think most things in biomedical engineering I think is inherently cool. Like it's hard to like not like something if it's like such a big impact. But once you actually do it, it's way different, you know. And so there's certain things that I liked less, and then I kind of, okay, so this is not what I see myself doing, and then you're left with just a few options, then you try those out, and then you're, okay, this is this I can see myself doing. So yeah, I think I think it's important for students to hear in terms of just like trying things out and then like crossing things off your list, and then hopefully towards the end you'll kind of have a better idea, and there's no shame in like even after graduation trying something out then, you know, like even
for sure.
Yeah, like there's it
starts after graduation.
Yeah, it starts after graduation. You don't have to have everything set out for you, you know, like a lot of students I think have that kind of pressure, oh, like you have 4 years to figure everything out, but like you don't, you have 4 years to start figuring it out, and then you can figure it out 4 years after that, you know. So like I kind of want to talk about next in terms of like what students are missing, right? Like in terms of like the extracurricular activities or in class, because again we're trying to shape. I mean, I guess what students are trying to get from a university is you're trying to get their future to be shaped better. So what do you guys think students are missing in terms of shaping their future, and it could be in bioengineering or it could be just in general? Like what do you think students are missing, and how I think biodesign is a great initiative that helps students kind of fill that gap of what they're missing, and that's what we're trying to do with CUBEC as well. Yeah. So what do you guys think what would go in that category of like missing for students?
Missing things?
Yeah.
I think one really interesting opportunity that biodesign offers is to get research experience. It's a research experience opportunity, but that doesn't require previous experience, which is something you don't often find in other like research internships or industry internships in general. Oftentimes it's like, oh, they only like the successful candidates always have like previous experience. So then sometimes you're sitting there wondering, well, like if I don't have any experience, where do I start? How do I get that first experience without it requiring me to have a previous research experience? So I think that's something really powerful about biodesign and becoming part of a research team in biodesign, is that it doesn't require previous experience. And it's a way to kind of dip your feet into the research sort of environment for the first time. And then once you have that experience, well, then you can put that on your CV, and then you can use that when you apply to other research internships. And then suddenly now you actually have experience, so you can have access to those other opportunities. So it's really bridging that gap. Yeah,
and I just think to your point about the, like you always see like on applications, like, oh, you need 2+ years of experience in this field, and you're just like a first year student. Like I would suggest like still apply. Like I think like for the positions that I've applied to, like I definitely didn't have the experience that they like told me I needed to have. But so still apply to those, and sometimes no one has that experience that they're asking for, and then if you're just a bit under there, like you can still get the role. But yeah, I think something that you're offering for students is like the ability to get research before applying to research, right? Even before doing certain lab courses. Like I know for a first year student who's doing biodesign hasn't done any lab courses in bioengineering, and when they do their courses, they're more prepared. they've done like electrophoresis or whatever, like they've already used pipettes, and like they're more familiar with the techniques and the material, and just even how to run a lab, like how to conduct research, how to do literature reviews. So I think like that's on the research side. So if you want to add a bit, like
for sure. A lot of things came to my mind. First, I think like I completely agree with everything Sara said, and I also think
Slay.
I also think CUBEC is filling in a huge gap. For example, Tech Fair is engineering related.
Don't even get me started about that.
And I think CUBEC really fills that gap for bioengineers because they have less exposure to opportunities because it's in your programs, and so. And so also when you guys talked about gaining research experience, I think our experiences in class may be limited, but I think we have had some design projects that it's important to, like, if you're starting to think about, where should I apply this and that, I think it's really understated that we can really take advantage of those projects, and actually Sara's project is a perfect testament to that. Because you can use those projects in, say your CV or interviews. They can really show leadership, creativity, and if you choose something you are genuinely interested in, it can go a long way. I think that's been shown here. And another thing that came to mind was how on the opposite sense, like sometimes you start out with zero experience and you want to just get exposure to the industry. And I know, Mark, you're probably a great example of that. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that, but you did have that experience, right? Where you just kind of, first year, you jumped into industry. Yeah,
it's true. So I think it's very important to like have an open mind. I think as students, and especially in such a broad field, like you do have a vision of what you think it is when you get into it, but then kind of your vision changes a bit, and because not everything is what it seems, So I did an internship at Philips. It was a healthcare company, and it was like jump right into the industry. It wasn't a technical position. It was more like a project management kind of role. It also gave me like the other side of like there's so much other things that are required besides like the research part, like even if, like you were saying, you have the product, right, but then you need the medical professionals, right? So kind of that relationship from the product all the way to like the client is something that I'm interested in. So that's kind of like where I think my path is going. And I guess like you were saying, Karim, things like Tech Fair and job fairs and things of that nature like are a little bit less available to bioengineering students, just because there's like less bioengineering companies, I think, at a larger scale. But it doesn't mean they're not out there. I just think it's just a matter of getting them to see students. Because we see a lot of like software companies and a lot of civil engineering companies. But if we want to get the bioengineering companies, we kind of have to reach out to them. They're really busy like developing devices that are going to save the world, so maybe they don't have the extra time.
Actually, I wanted to comment on that because I think that that link with industry is like, I think there could be more. There could be more resources to connect, especially like bioengineering students to the industry, because of the program at McGill especially is very research focused, and there's a lot of emphasis placed on research, which is great. Like a lot of people want to go into academia and they want to do R&D and things like that. But some people are also really interested in industry, and it was great that you got that initial experience with industry. And I was really happy to be able to get my internships, which were also in marketing. So you were saying like bringing the product to the customer and stuff. So I was really kind of involved with that in my internships as well. And I think it would be really cool to have more opportunities, kind of like CUBEC and Tech Fair, but like to really connect bioengineering students to the industry. And I feel like that's something that's lacking, at least in the McGill program right now. If I may, with that slight critique of the program.
A little bit of shade.
Slightly critiquing, but
criticism.
They're working on it. They're working on it.
Constructive criticism for the program, yes.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of like where CUBEC comes in, and like not to like give ourselves a little shout out, but I think
totally it is.
I think that's kind of where we come in terms of like bringing those companies and there's even organizations that are involved in like developing new medical devices, new therapies. Because there are many out there. Like, I mean, I've been sending out a lot of emails the past few months for like reaching out and sponsorship and stuff like that. And
you must know all of them, every single one.
I don't know the person. I know the info emails. I don't know them personally. But yeah, so like we're reaching out to a lot of those and like bringing those to students. I mean, students can kind of get to see like what all the other opportunities are out there, because like research is definitely out there, but research is not for everybody. I think that's kind of the reason why like there's people still looking for research spaces. I think a lot of the industry space is also interesting to students, and I think what we're trying to do with CUBEC is kind of bring the industry to the students so they can kind of get that insight, because obviously the university can bring the university to the students, but the industry can bring the industry to the industry, but we kind of want to make the industry into the university. So that we're trying to see how we can go about doing that. And I mean, the conference in January is kind of the big step in terms of getting actual face-to-face visibility for students in biomedical engineering across Canada, with companies across Canada and around the world. So I guess like that kind of ties into to like just like the broader scope of like what all of us students are doing like outside of class. You know, like there's like we all go to class, but then we also do things outside, like in terms of extracurricular activities. So maybe we can talk about how you guys balance like being involved in BioDesign and like say a lot of meetings, like, you know, like Friday, like you just had a meeting before this podcast recording, and like I had a meeting this morning, and so like basically how do you guys handle like this balance between like making sure your grades are solid and making sure BioDesign is solid and like the adhesive is working.
Can I make just one comment before on what we were just talking about before? I think this next topic is really great, and we're going to have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We're all very busy. Yeah. But one thing that struck me, I find that bioengineering, you know, McGill being a research kind of focused school, it does place us more into like research oriented careers, but bioengineering I think definitely distinguishes itself from other engineering faculties in that, you know, research is even more accentuated, and I think sometimes it might leave some people, I mean, this is somewhat my experience about like, if you want to go in industry, like how do those two kind of come together? Like how can you use maybe graduate studies to complement your career in industry? I think this is something that like I question sometimes. And since there are so many opportunities in research at McGill, I mean, maybe you guys have some answers to these, but it's clear that it's very favorable to pursue at least a master's, sometimes a PhD. And the question that I'm sort of trying to answer as I pursue my degree is like, okay, well, how would this benefit? Like, in which ways does this benefit my career? Or maybe from an industry standpoint, what kind of bioengineers are they looking for? Since it's such it can get very specific. Yeah. Like, is bachelor's enough? Do you need a master's? Do you need a PhD? Is this different from other engineers? I don't want to like go into this too much because I know we have another topic waiting for us, but that was just something that was on my mind.
This is something interesting, and I think about this all the time. Like, oh, do I need a master's or like whatever? Because right now I don't think I'm gonna pursue like grad studies. Like it all can change. Like everything is very like action based at this moment, so like everything can change really quickly. But
I have a quick add-on on that, just like as a kind of, because I was wondering the same thing, like, oh, what kind of educational path should I follow to get into like which careers in industry? And I'd say one piece of advice that I got, and I can't remember where I got it from, so I unfortunately can't credit the source, but I guess it's pretty general though. It's a good idea to like go on LinkedIn and like look up different like position titles, or find different people who are in the positions you'd like to be in, or the companies that you'd like to work at, and then see what their postings, like what are the educational requirements on their job postings that might interest you. Like read through the tasks and the role description, and then you can look at what the requirements that they're asking for, and then maybe like what people are working at that company, what education do they have, that kind of helps you kind of build a potential path, or like have some examples to follow when you don't know where to look, or when you don't know what opportunities even exist in industry. So that's a good tip that I've heard before.
It's definitely a good tip, because that way you can see like what background do these people have who ended up getting jobs. I mean, that's also important. But I think just to your point, in terms of grad studies, there's other options in terms of like just not pursuing like technical based grad studies. I think something that I'm exploring in the future is like an MBA as well. I know a lot of engineering students can do that as well, and if they want to get more in the managerial space in terms of project management, product management, life cycle assessment, and all this kind of thing.
Rad Jassim.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a reference.
That's a reference. Yeah. I just remembered to have a midterm next Friday. Thanks, Sara. So Yeah, so I think like it's something like an MBA is also like another option that like most students like don't know or maybe don't know a lot about, and even like it's a legit option. I mean, I know a few people who've done MBAs and like they're working in pretty serious roles right now. I mean, it doesn't have to be in bioengineering; it could be in any field of engineering. But that's something I think that you can pursue if you're interested in industry. But if you don't want to do like a master's of like science or master's of engineering, like you have to write like a huge thesis and stuff. Like I don't know if I can write a thesis. Like I think that's something I don't know if I can complete. So yeah, I think just that aspect of industry. And there's so many other opportunities I think for like grad studies and industry. So we have a new guest, Tuna, who just left the lab. He's a hardworking guy. So this is Tuna. If you want to introduce yourself and like who you are and what you do, I guess in terms of like biodesign.
Biodesign,
like that.
Okay, so I'm Tuna. I'm U3 bioengineering, and I'm the VP Finance of Biodesign. I've been involved with biodesign since my first year. It was actually a huge opportunity for me because my first year was online. I did it from Turkey because of COVID.
Yep.
So biodesign was actually the only student involvement I had in first year. So for me, it was big. It was a big part of it has been a big part of my university experience so far.
Wow.
And while I started off on a design team with a project we had 2 years ago, a water filtration backpack project, and then afterwards, I've moved on to become the VP Finance, and I'm the VP Finance still.
Nice. You even have the sweater that matches the biodesign color.
Of course.
Represent. Yeah, also green. I'm wearing green. It's like, Sara, what's going on?
I didn't get the memo about the outfit.
I don't know. We're dressed in biodesign today. So I guess like just before Tuna walked in, we're talking about just the different opportunities that there are like to get to industry based on grad study. So I think something that I found is interesting is there's quite a lot of students who do masters and then like do spin-offs from the work they're doing in their masters. So like, for example, there's like a few companies in Montreal who started in the lab in McGill, and then they saw that the work they were doing was like had some potential in the field, like in the industry, and then they worked with McGill to get some kind of contract for like patents and stuff like that for IP, and then they kind of spin it off into a business. So I think that's another opportunity that people can explore. I think meeting the right people at the university can also lead to opportunities outside. So if someone's interested in the entrepreneurship space or the startup space, you can still do a master's, and then you can have a better connection with your product. I mean, you're working on it for 2 years, so you kind of know it really well already, and then you can, if you have some market potential, that's kind of what students do. From what I've seen, I think that's really interesting. So yeah, I guess you guys have any thoughts on that, or we can hop into like the next topic. What do you think about that, Tuna?
With the startup scene in bioengineering field, I think it's a bit different than tech startups.
Yeah,
in
for sure.
Tech startups, the atmosphere
It's so different.
has been young. The trend has been young dropouts / young university students working on projects, getting funding from venture capital.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
However, when I was beginning of my studies, I was very much into the startup scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked into it, and it looks like in the biotechnology field, actually investments are more into mature students. So they look for PhDs, they look for MDs, so they look for higher degrees, because in the biotech environment you heavily rely on research. So they want you to. They want to make sure that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I think just to piggyback on that, I think it's just based on like the regulatory issues that I think bioengineering and any device that's going to go in the body or going to go on the body or going to detect the disease, I think is much more difficult to get out there. If it's just an app, you just kind of put it on the app store and here it goes. But when it's like a medical device, it's much more difficult to kind of get it out to the market. So yeah, you're right in terms of like MDs are important on the team, but that doesn't mean that a student can have a partnership with an MD or have a partnership with a PhD that knows the field really well, and then having those partnerships can give you those extra resources that maybe you're lacking as a graduated student. So yeah, I think it kind of goes into like teams. I think it's kind of it's important what team you're working on, and the different people on their team can have different roles, and you guys can complement each other. I think that's what you guys are. That's what we're doing here. Like I think in biodesign, you guys complement each other. You have knowledge from your internship, and you have knowledge from the research they did in the summer, and you guys are kind of merging it together. And you guys clearly have different paths and different roles, but you guys complement each other. So I think that's kind of like a little argument against what you're saying is that
I actually have an argument against myself.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, it's not really an argument against myself. Well, what I said is more about the trend, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to have student-led startups.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't know if you have discussed about this, but in the past, BioDesign has, some of the projects of BioDesign have become startups, 2 of them actually. I don't know if you have discussed this before, but in the podcast. But
that's why you're here.
Great. We have money.
Yeah.
So we had a project focusing on detecting algae blooms in lakes.
Is it algo?
Algo, algo. That has changed now. Its new name is like BioC or something. BioC.
Okay, cool.
And that's become a startup. And for that, the McGill is also a good environment to support your startup ambitions, because there are many competitions where you pitch your idea, including on projects like ours. And then they provide you with mentorship. They match you with entrepreneurs and residents, which are basically entrepreneurs who are just taking a break and helping students or young people build up their companies. So that's one example. We also have Maneko, which is basically a mosquito repellent made from mangrove leaf extracts, which was our project last year. And the team has decided to take it. Well, they entered it into a competition, like one we described, and they became a finalist. So based on the money they received and the guidance, now they've incorporated. And the good thing is McGill doesn't ask for any amount of IP. Exactly. The only part where you have to share is if you're using a lab space of McGill, then you would share it with the lab, but not necessarily. Like McGill offers these entrepreneurial supports for free, and they expect you to give back once you reach a certain stage.
I think it's really interesting. There's quite a lot of like tech startup, med tech startup incubators that are around Montreal, and in like Toronto and Calgary and like Boston. Like there's a lot of these places where if you have an idea and like you think has potential, you can go to and kind of get those ears and eyes to. And even the resources to help you work with that. So yes, I think that's a really good point in terms of the entrepreneur in residence. That there's quite a lot of resources out there. So what do you think are some resources that you guys as like BioDesign like team leads? What do you think you guys are missing as design teams? Like we spoke a bit about what students are missing. What do you guys think are some design team things you guys can get, or have you guys been talking about that amongst yourselves? I mean, I think. We can kind of brainstorm a bit now, like what kind of, because I know right now you guys are using lab space from where, like you guys are using lab space from different professors, or is that something that is a little bit of a challenge? You know, there's all these other projects that are being worked on at the same time, and you have to share the equipment. Like what do you guys are thinking in terms of different challenges, or what you guys are missing in terms of like BioDesign specifically?
Well, I think we do a pretty good job of like addressing those challenges that you brought up, because at the beginning of the year, we send out like a lot of emails to professors for collaborations for lab space and for like theoretical guidance in terms of like our subject matter and the specific science that we're researching. And usually we're able to get mentors for both or one or whatever the project needs. So we collaborate with professors, and we get some responses when we email a lot of different professors who are active in the area that corresponds to whatever project we're working on. And so we're very busy at the beginning of the year sending out all of those emails and contacting those people. So I think we do a pretty good job of addressing that. In terms of other issues, I can't really speak to much else. It's been going pretty well for us so far. So if Tuna or Karim have anything else to mention.
I think a problem, at least since I've been involved with, so since 2020, I think a big problem with BioDesign, but also with bioengineering, has been space, and this is physical space as well as recognition. So BioDesign is also young, like bioengineering. So and McGill is an old institution, so in an old city. So having the space, making the space for yourself, whether it's just an office or whether it's lab space, it's tough.
Yeah, of course.
And this also applies to bioengineering. So it's not necessarily a problem of biodesign. All bioengineering design teams have this problem. So space is very valuable on McGill campus. and anywhere in any big cities. And biotechnology tends to be around big cities due to the heavy influence of big universities.
Yeah.
So I think space is a big issue, and what you can do to address it is because you have to open your eyes and you have to ask.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, they don't give.
Yeah,
so you have to
exactly.
constantly make sure. Sometimes new space is available. Some design teams shut down, their space is given out. So you have to go for it. Be on top of it. Ask for it because they don't give you unless you ask.
Yeah, no,
it's
exactly.
true now that I think about it. A lot of other design teams that I'm aware of have like their own space,
Yeah.
like the McConnell basement,
That's
for example.
yeah.
We don't have BioDesign doesn't have like a dedicated space like that. We have a locker.
Yeah.
We have a
That's a good
singular
start.
locker
That's a
where we
good
can
start.
store
Which
our
we pay
stuff. Which we pay for, yes, of course.
We don't have CUBEC doesn't have a locker. We have to figure that out.
Well, okay, so we're doing better on space than you guys.
Can we share with you guys?
It's kind of cramped in that locker, I'll be honest.
Okay.
I think also, and I think that means that sometimes we have to get lucky as well. Like even though we did reach out at the beginning of the year, we really rely on the professors' help. Like since we rely on their supervisor and the space they give us like a lot, that really depends. That really sets, I think, a big part of the trajectory for our project. And so if we did have maybe perhaps more resources towards that end, I think it would maybe let us be a bit more independent, have a bit more control over where we can take our project. And professors have been like really great with us so far. I think last year I had experience working with Mineko in the lab with Dr. Vlaho in the Automas, and she really helped us like a lot. She really helped us like develop our product, do testing essentially. And so I think since we're so dependent on the professors in the lab space, I think there is like that sense of luck as well that we need to.
Yeah.
Like there's we send out those emails, but it also depends like what we can receive.
Yeah, it's true. It's a lot of reaching out. I think it's also important. Like you can write emails to like 100 professors, and like even if one of them answers back, it's already a win, right? So I think it kind of could lead to my next question for you, Tuna, in terms of reaching out for for finances and for funding. In terms of it's just all about reaching out to the people who have the same mission as you, reaching out to the right people, and then getting that response back. So what has your experience been in terms of like raising money or things like that for your design team or whoever on the team who deals with that?
Well, with funding, our biggest one of our biggest sponsors has been the US.
Okay, nice.
Luckily, the US has a design team fund, and each year a certain amount of money gets allocated to this fund, and this is split between different design teams based on like a mathematical model, which is like it takes into account how many engineering students you have.
I'm curious to see what that looks like. Yeah.
How many competitions you have won. Basically, obviously, if the US is putting in money, it wants some sort of representation.
Of course,
and if you can represent the US better, obviously there's a bias towards giving you more money. But overall, it's a quite fair model,
okay.
And it allows. It's a big portion of our funding, and it really helps us keep afloat. But also at the same time, you have to take advantage of certain funding opportunities. Like for example, there was the bicentennial
donation,
double donation campaign.
Yeah,
exactly.
I saw it on the on BioDesign story. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The exact name I don't remember, but it was basically a donation campaign done by McGill, where McGill matched all donations.
McGill 24.
Yeah, McGill, exactly. It was the McGill 24 donation campaign, for example. You have to be on the lookout for such campaigns where you can maximize your output. And that's especially important because many of our projects with biotechnology stuff, it's really expensive, especially whenever you want to do something antibody related, for example.
Yeah, those are expensive.
Each vials go for like $500-$600, and they have only like microliters in them. So to be able to keep afloat, you have to really be on the lookout you have to optimize your funding. A big portion of our help also comes from professors. Sometimes the professors who we work with, they allow us to use their equipment for free, which really decreases the cost because we don't have to buy them, which costs like on the range of $10,000 to $100,000. So there is it helps to not pay for that money, which we couldn't. But a big point is also we're not for profit, right? So all the stuff we do it for the students, for bioengineering students or for different students to have exposure in biotechnology. So when we approach companies, it's a fine line we have to draw that we are not a company. And
same goes for us.
When we pitch a product, when we say, hey, would you like to invest in our project, for example, the surgical bioadhesive, it's not really for them to invest in.
They're not getting a return.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are not necessarily joining, they're not necessarily getting equity in our, our project. It's purely a project for them to support for reasons to give back to their community, to help students, basically for out of social responsibility, not for financial incentive.
Well, it kind of also just pushes I think the field of bioengineering, biomedical engineering forward. I think that's kind of the incentive that we try to give like companies or funds that do invest in in biodesign or CUBEC, in terms of like your involvement in these design teams and study groups, or you're just pushing your own field forward. And I think that's kind of, we have to hold them accountable for that, because if not them, like who else? It's kind of it's kind of the role that we're going to have when we're engineers and when we're like in the field. We want to help the students because we know how it feels to be students. So I think those are the people that can help us the most. And like you said, they're not getting a monetary return on investment, but they are getting a lot of things back, even visibility, I guess, in terms of being aware that students being aware who they are, that they're involved. I think kind of helps in the future getting students to come to their company or come to their things, just kind of noticing that they're out there to help. So I think that's another good point that you mentioned.
Yeah, we know that some companies who sponsor design teams, for example, will then forward their internships. Whenever their internships open, they'll send the links or the resources for that to the people in that team that they're sponsoring, and then they'll often end up hiring interns for their companies from those design teams that they sponsor. So that's another way that they can benefit. And
I guess it's kind of interesting that they bring that up. And maybe Karim, you have something to add on this, or anybody else can chime in. So I guess people who have graduated from bioengineering or from any from McGill who've been a part of biodesign, what are they? Do you know what they're working on now, and do you think their experience has helped them? I don't know if you guys are aware of any grads. I think that there are a few who are working on their own thing. So if you guys can talk about that, and how biodesign you think has helped them kind of in their future careers.
I can think of one or two graduates from biodesign who have gone into startups, and I don't know where they are now, but I know that after graduating, I believe that they stuck to that startup, and that must have really helped, and especially when you're interested in the startup scene, I think there's nothing better than getting that experience firsthand. Having worked on that project before and then getting to turn it into a startup is a really unique experience. However, I don't know much about what they've gone through, so I don't have much.
So I guess it's interesting because I think we all have this capstone next year, and we're like, oh, this is gonna be our big design project where we get to really be hands-on with our work, and a lot of them are research projects, and you could do an industry kind of a collaboration, but I guess kind of students want to have their capstone really mean something to them. So biodesign, for example, is kind of doing a capstone before a capstone. I guess if you kind of can say it that way. So that's interesting, I guess. So when you do your capstone, you can kind of contribute more to your team in terms of, I've done this before, or at least what you're good at, I think, because once you work in a team, it's good to kind of differentiate, okay, I can work on this, this is really more of my specialty, and this I'm not so good at. So I guess working in biodesign and design teams and getting involved, I just think in general, in university, can kind of help you really know what you're good at, and then that's how you can contribute, I guess, in a capstone. It's if you guys can add anything on that, what do you think, Sara?
Yeah, well, one good skill I'd say that you get from biodesign that can be applied in capstone or in future research if you go on to do grad school is really knowing how to troubleshoot issues that come up in a project. And being responsible for that and how the project goes. A lot of the skills that people have said they gain, for example, is when things go wrong, what do you do? How do you adapt on the fly? How do you fix problems when you're on a short timeline? And then meeting those deadlines of deliverables, application deadlines for different funding opportunities, for competitions, for things like that, and being ready. Really that's applicable to a lot of different things. The capstone project is another project that you're responsible for, and you'll have to inevitably troubleshoot issues that come up with it, and you're responsible for the deliverable on that, which is also the case for graduate research, and is also applicable to a lot of even industry when you're a project manager, for example. So those are some really translational skills.
Yeah, and I guess you can when you're asking an interview, what is the problem that you solved? You can use a biodesign problem that you had, and then you can use that to answer. So I think there's a lot of just things you could talk about that you've done. It's like we said before, it's kind of stacking up your experience list even if you don't have any experience, you kind of need it. So
it gives you some great anecdotes to talk about during interviews for sure.
Yeah, that's the right way to say it. That's what I was going at. So yeah, it gives you some good things to talk about in those scenarios.
If I can add to that, I think one of the best things that you do learn, which is related to what Sara said, but really taking a project from start to end, in the sense that since you are entirely responsible for it, it is what you put into it, and oftentimes the barriers that you think you might encounter are not, there are a lot of unexpected barriers that will show up, and at the same time you're doing this purely with your teammates. You might have a supervisor who can help you, but it's really for you guys to figure out how things work for yourself. And I think maybe that's also something you learn in graduate school. When you have an independent research study, you have to figure out things out for yourself a lot, but I think this doing it collaboratively is also really interesting in biodesign.
Especially for open-ended problems, right? Because a lot of the assignments and the things we do in our courses, although they try to sometimes give us open-ended projects to do, a lot of our assignment questions are based on a textbook, or it's based on things that they've taught us in lectures. So it's very much there's a solution that you have to find, but it exists. Whereas in real life and in industry and in these types of student-led projects that work on real-world issues, it's really open. It's a lot more open-ended, and it's more you are kind of building it by yourself, and there's no set solution that already exists. It's kind of up to you to create it and make it on your own. So it's very different from classwork in that sense, and it's a lot more meaningful, personally, for that reason.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't become as simple as just here's the solution to the problem that you solve. Right? You kind of have to find your own problem. And then find the solution to that problem, and then that is definitely a harder process. But I think that's kind of at least my favorite part of classes, when they do give us those open-ended questions. We have to get with your teammates and try to think of a design. And so I know for example for our fluids class, we have to do a design project. So I think that's where the opportunity where I can apply all the knowledge that I learned in class, understand-ish, whatever, and apply.
You'll see, it's a test.
And then you kind of the thing is you come up with something yourself, and then even if you're analyzing something that already exists, you're kind of seeing how this is all applied. I think that's kind of what engineering is, seeing the application of the theory. So I think that's for me my favorite part. I don't love writing exams. So I don't know about you guys, but I think applying the engineering principles.
I love exams. What do you mean, man?
That's strange. I don't know why. So I think just really those design projects is really at least what I'm looking forward to. So. What do you guys think in terms of do you guys think that gives the student projects you do in class, is that giving you guys good experience in terms of at least for biodesign? I know for you it kind of fueled your project, but Tuna, what do you think? Do you think those student groups and projects have helped you overall in terms of even just understanding the field itself?
Well, I think with bioengineering, the stuff we learn in class, the classes we take, fluid mechanics, signals, or design of biosensors, there are only a few of them will actually be applicable to what we're going to be doing in the future. I mean, one thing I've realized, I work in the chemical engineering department doing research in the stem cell bioprocessing lab, and we're actually producing a new technology based on stents. But what I've realized is it's so specific that maybe 90% of what you learn isn't really relevant. Only you really go into depth into the 5% you learn in school. But I think what matters is not really what you learn, it's these projects, because in these projects you learn how to deal with people. You learn how to deal with your friend who's not necessarily working a lot, or you're dealing with your friend who's working too much. So you have to mediate. You have to make sure everybody plays their part. You have to communicate openly, clearly. So I think you learn these communication skills. You learn time management skills that are not only applicable to bioengineering, but if you decide to go into another field, into another industry, those translate. And I think with bioengineering, which is actually originally the question you asked, with bioengineering, it allows you to apply those skills anywhere. I know people who graduated from bioengineering and they went into finance, they went into investment banking, but I know people, recently a graduate of our work went to work for McKinsey, we're doing consulting on totally different things, working private equity, but then you can also go into pharma, you can go into graduate school, medical school, law school. A lot of friends of mine wants to go to law school.
I never heard of that one. That's the first one for me.
Yeah, I mean patent law or
patent law. That's true.
I think what matters is in bioengineering. What I've seen is the students tend to be type A, very hardworking, very self-motivated and determined students.
It's a good perspective.
And coming in, they have the grades, so they show their determination. However, skills like communication skills, teamwork, time management, they don't necessarily come with grades. They need to be developed during your studies. So I think
agree with that.
When a hardworking student can complement their skill set with time management, with effective communication, I think you create a much stronger profile that that can contribute to any other field more than bioengineering, depending on the interests.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. Yeah, I think that was like really well summarized. I think that's a really big point. I think, like you mentioned before, like you're not going to like all your classes, right? Like not only that, like a lot of the classes you can use, like we're not going to solve. I don't see myself solving PDEs like in 50.
I hope not. I hope not. If I don't.
Yeah, so we learn this knowledge. Like it's mostly for just like to teach us how to learn. I guess that's kind of like what this is for. And then like you said, like learning how to work in a team, how to work on a project, how to see something go from start to finish. Those are really the skills that are going to be implemented, because right now we're just learning how to learn, and then we just apply that knowledge to something else. Like you said, a lot of people are doing other things, right? So yeah, I think you were going to say something about that.
Oh, well, because I know you were going to ask us earlier about like time management and
stuff.
I know Tuna really touched on that, and well, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to talk about this now, but
yeah, we should.
It's a good segue.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, it's a good segue. I mean,
what was your question again? Like, how did you phrase it?
Yeah, so I think like given like all four of us in this room, I mean, we're pretty busy in terms of when it comes to school, and like design teams for you guys, CUBEC for me, and like others. I mean, people work part time as well. I think it's something also that has to be credited as well. And also like we try to have fun. Like I know like if we try to go out and try to party. Like social life, yeah, that's also important.
Like a bar crawl 1/3.
A little blues night.
A little blues night. Yeah, I'm gonna go to blues after this, hopefully.
Ideally.
Yeah, if you want to join me, you can join me.
I think I'm coming.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go together.
Nothing beats cheap beer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Responsible.
Wise words. So yeah, but again, like like we have basically 4 months of like this like really hardcore like time management challenge, right? Like how do you guys like pushing through this? Like what's your advice, what's your experience? Because I know like we all like probably the first year we kind of I think like for us from CEGEP, I think we kind of had like a little bit of that like we got ready for that a bit, because CEGEP was a bit tough. We were taking like 7 courses. I think I can't take 7 courses now. I don't know what I was doing then. But I guess for students in general, like what are some techniques you guys use, or what advice you have for students to kind of just manage their time, just to be able to like do as many things as possible while like keeping their mental health like in a good like space. And that's also like that's probably the most important thing, right? So
well, the tool that I use to manage my time and manage all my activities is Google Calendar.
Okay.
But this isn't necessarily like a plug for Google Calendar, because you could really use any software that lets you kind of like Notion or things like that. I'm not super familiar with Notion, but I know a lot of people use it for time management. But essentially with my calendar, I just use it to like put time slots, not just for my classes and not just for my meetings, which are set in time, but also like work blocks on specific things. So I'll assign like certain specific times to work on.
I should start doing
I'm very organized.
I should start doing that.
But yeah, I have like specific blocks to work on specific assignments, but I think it's also important not to overdo it, in the sense that I also like it's important to block off time to also take breaks. As someone who sometimes struggles to like give myself a break and things like that, it's really important for your mental health, like you were mentioning earlier, to like work in those times to actually take a break so that you're not always working. But yeah, that organization is really good to like say when you're going to do specific things, and that keeps in mind your deadlines as well, so what you need to prioritize and when it's most likely that you'll actually have time to do things, and being realistic. That's another thing, one of the pitfalls that I kind of fell into when I started doing this like heavy duty sort of calendar planning my week out and stuff like that. I would put like work blocks in a specific time, like between classes, like let's say 1 hour between classes. But then I realized that like after a class, my brain is too, or after this specific class, for example, like my brain is too fried and I can't like work on stuff. So that time's better used like taking a snack, or like, you know, if I have to have lunch at that time or whatever, like do something else, or just like rest, or just send out an email that I had to send for a while. Like don't work on a project because I'm not gonna have enough time. So it's those lessons need to be learned like through practice and through actually doing it, realizing you can't do stuff in a specific time, and it just helps hone your time management skills further as you do it.
Yeah, I think taking breaks is important. I think just sitting in the sun, like I just like go to the McDonald's stuff and just sit in the sun for like 20 minutes, you know, like just like, getting the vitamin D, you know, like think that's important. Like just taking a break.
You need to intentionally create space for those
yeah.
breaks.
Because once you're going and going and going, you have so many things to think about. You just need like you put a block of time, just do nothing too. You know. What do you think, Tuna? What do you think in terms of the time management aspect?
I think I never had a problem taking breaks. My problem was taking too many breaks.
Okay.
Different people have different
Yeah,
temperaments.
But what I've realized is the quality matters. So it doesn't matter how many hours you put in. It also doesn't matter how many hours of fun you have. It's the quality, right?
That's a good point.
If I've blocked off a whole day to do one task, I know and I inherently know that I can do it in like 5-6 hours. I'm gonna spend maybe 5 hours procrastinating for it and then 5 hours doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas if I can schedule a quality time, for example, if I know I'm gonna go out at 8 p.m., then I'm forced to finish my task by 8 p.m. So that by creating like a quality fun time, that increases the quality of the time I block off for studying. So for me, what I do is I couple like an activity that I don't find fun with an activity that's fun. If I'm going to the library, I'll go with a few friends, and every time I take a break, I'll go have lunch with them, or I'll go for a coffee with them, or I'll go just for a walk because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And it'll allow this kind of coupling will allow me to decrease the negative feelings associated with studying, which is not necessarily.
Well, you really thought this through.
There's an insidious parallel here with chemical reactions that my brain wants to think about, and I'm trying to push it away.
Wow.
Exactly, coupling matters.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
You have to. It's like enzymatic reaction. You have to come over the.
The
you
energy
have to,
theory.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh my God.
There's another term. I read this book called Atomic Habits. I don't know if you guys have read it.
I've heard of it.
I want to read it.
Yeah, well, you already actually practice one of the things that is mentioned in the book. Which
Look
is
at
called
me.
The author, did you read the book? Did you read the book?
Atomic Habit.
Yeah, like in the book he calls it, what does he call it? Like habit stacking, but essentially like doing something that you already do with something that you have to get done. And it's really helpful. And also another quote related to what you guys were talking about. I don't remember where I saw it, but I think someone said like, if you don't take a break for yourself, like if you don't schedule a break, your body will take a break for you, and it won't be like at a convenient time. So
it's smart too.
that's, I think for me there's like probably nothing else I think more about than like my schedule, which might not be a good thing or bad thing, but like, okay, I don't mean like there's nothing else I think about, but it's like out of the things that are continuously on my mind, this is something that's always on my mind because it's always changing from semester to year, to week. You're always faced with like different tasks and different like desires. You want to do different things from week to week, and you have also different needs from week to week. Some weeks you're just so exhausted, and what worked for you last week doesn't work this week, and like so you really can't generalize time management. So what I learned, I wish I could just like kind of apply the same thing, and then okay, you get it done, let's move on, but. Like Sara said, it comes from practice. Like everyone has their own experience with time management, and I really invite students who want to kind of get more involved. This whole thing is about biodesign, right? And I think it's really worth it to pursue these activities, and I think it's really worth it to make time for them. And you have to choose your priorities, but personally, I would 100% recommend decreasing your course load if you can to make time for these activities, or reshuffling, maybe taking a summer course. I think
going on exchange also.
Yes, I am, and that's why I have to extend, which it gives me more space to kind of explore these clubs.
Yeah.
But maybe more about time management. I also use Google Calendar and
I don't use Google. I use an agenda.
Really?
I should
Wow.
probably stop that. Right?
Old school.
Yeah, I'm old school like that. But I think that brings up a good point, Karim. I think it's very important for students to even the whole time management thing. It kind of teaches you how to manage your time. Because when you graduate, you'll have a job, or you'll be doing grad school, and you'll have a family. For those who want one and stuff like that. And just other responsibilities you have. You have to take care of your apartment more. It's kind of these kind of things. Or I guess if you're what I'm trying to say is if you're devoting your time to different things right now, you're preparing yourself to devote time to different things later in the future as well. So when you're in your 30s and you have more responsibilities, and if you have just more things to worry about, doing things like this kind of prepares you for that as well. And it's not like maybe that sounded like a negative thing because you're preparing yourself for like a dark time. I don't know, but I guess it's kind of like it just teaches you these tools that you I don't know where else you could learn, and it's better to have them than not have them, I guess, to begin with.
Yeah, that's definitely another way that involvement in extracurricular activities and clubs really kind of enriches your experience, because it does help you learn to juggle. Like, for example, in my first year, I didn't do any extracurricular things because I just wanted to see how I would adjust to the difficulty level of university courses versus high school. I came straight out of high school. And so I didn't do any extracurriculars. I only focused on school because I wanted to make sure I had that down first, like that foundation. And then as I progressed through the semesters and through the years, then I realized, okay, I don't need to put in as much effort. Like, I've got this down. I understand how this works now, because you get used to it over time. And then after that, you can add on like more extracurricular things. I know some people start right off the bat in first year because they're really involved in those like extracurricular societies and stuff. But for me personally, that's kind of how it worked out. And I added that as an extra thing onto my plate later on. And it has really, so it kind of like structured it in levels for me. Like, first it was like level 1, like just figure out your courses, just know how to do well in your courses. And then like, you know, adding on more levels to that afterwards. Like, okay, so now I'm managing like a part-time job, for example, on top of that, and then different like mentorship positions on top of that, and then now design team stuff on top of that. So now I end up with like a bunch of different things that I'm doing, but I definitely started on like level 1 with only courses. So I added that like incrementally.
Yeah, and I think just to that point as well, I think it's important to do things that you're passionate about too. Like, I think there's a lot of people who just like you said, in the first year they want to become involved, they join like 10 different clubs, and I think that's, you kind of, if you want to do something effectively, I think for yourself, it's kind of joining some things that you are passionate about, and that does come with like trying new things. So like, I guess what you're saying, you're stacking things up and kind of seeing what you like, and then once you like something, you even doesn't feel like a responsibility, right? I mean, I think for me, like, CUBEC doesn't feel like a responsibility. I'm sure for you guys are passionate about your project, so like doing the design work is kind of fun. I mean, right? So
I think
we should wrap up.
Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up. So thanks again, guys, for joining. So you guys can see BioDesign like on all their social media, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on the website as well. You guys can see all the projects and everybody on the team. And thanks again for listening and watching, for those of you watching. And hopefully this worked out well. Bye, guys.
Thanks very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right.
that pass